Hey, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Chris Hobbs. I'm the Director of Athletics at the Kings Academy in West Palm Beach, Florida. I am beginning my 19th year in education, and it'll be my 14th or 15th year in athletic administration. I've been an AD at 3 different schools, all private schools. One was just outside of Washington, D.C., a long time ago. And then I had a great 9 or 10 years right outside of New York City in the New Jersey area at a place called Timothy Christian School. And now I'm starting year number 4 here at the Kings Academy. And just been a wonderful experience. I had some great coaches growing up when I was in high school and college that had a huge impact on my life. And so all of this began as just a passionate, 21, 22-year-old right out of college, going from being a small Division III college basketball player to being a fired up junior high coach. And then it kind of evolved from there. And I really got pretty passionate and excited about helping coaches do really what coaches did for me as a student athlete. And so that's been the transition. Certainly the last 8 years, I've transitioned pretty aggressively, kind of a little bit away from coaching and more into being an athletic administrator and leading coaches. And it's been tremendous, really, really fulfilling. Really enjoy the people I work with at all the schools I've been at. So I guess I've been a little blessed there to have some great people to work at 3 different spots. And so that kind of brings me to today. Just finished up my Doctor of Education last spring, and the dissertation was on the leadership behaviors of athletic administrators and how it influences varsity head coaches. And so I guess that means I'm kind of serious about this stuff. So,
Yeah.
But again, that kind of brings me right here to our time together, Frank.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, since you mentioned it, give me some similarities and some differences between the different places, the different states you've been as an AD.
Yeah. So my time in Northern Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C., quite honestly, I fell butt backwards into being an athletic administrator. I was probably a little too young, but I was in the good graces of the AD there at the time, who was kind of a patriarch at the school. And he had left the AD spot to accept the principal spot. And apparently, this is what I'm told, behind closed doors with the board, he made a strong request that I be the next AD. And so at 27 years old, I was the AD of a pretty nice sized private school athletic department, and man, just loved it, and learned fast, failed fast probably.
Right.
And then the 9 years, so that community was a great community, heavily influenced by Washington, D.C. So we had a lot of parents working at the Pentagon. So the great kids, being raised by parents with some form of military connection or military background. They were super supportive, and really put a ton of responsibility on their kids to kind of own their own experience. So you didn't deal with some of the craziness that maybe we hear about today. Now that was also, 15, 16 years ago. So times have changed a little bit. And then my 9 or 10 years in New Jersey were awesome because I got to be an athletic director and sit on some executive committees in what was largely a public school conference. And so being a private school guy, that was a really good experience. And I got to rub shoulders with some tremendous athletic administrators, like really, really strong educational leaders that their bent just happened to be athletic administration. And so I learned a ton rubbing shoulders with those people, and they were really gracious and giving me some opportunities to help lead the conference. And then 6 degrees of separation landed me very unexpectedly here in South Florida at a place called the Kings Academy. And this community is very unique in the fact that it is very well resourced, and they are really, really uniquely committed to the best possible experience you can give your student athletes. And so as an AD, that's super fun. Because you got a school that wants you to be successful. That also comes with some pressures because they want you to be successful, So, but it's been a great. I'm starting year 4 here, and it's been a really cool experience. It's certainly the biggest athletic department that I've had the opportunity to lead, and everyone's been great, awesome. Coaches have been awesome. They've responded so well. Relationships developed fast. The kids are great. Parents are super excited. So I just feel really blessed. I've been to 3 good spots with great communities and have learned very unique things from each community.
Now, over the course of time, I'm sure you figured out, okay, here's how I start my season. Here's how I do things. What's the one thing that jumps out at you that you said, I didn't know this was going to be a priority when you first started, and it is now every time you talk to people?
Probably the timelines. I think every year I do this, I want larger and larger timelines, meaning, if something was, when I first became an athletic administrator, if something to communicate 2 weeks out was okay, I would say by now, I probably wanted 8 weeks communicated out, just an expansion of timelines and a developing ability to kind of pick my head up from the chaos and look further and further down the road and start thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to prepare for that? That's certainly something that I think I'm probably a long way away from where I was when I first started to where I am now, almost. And I think many athletic administrators would say this, you almost become obsessive. There's so many details. There really is only one option, and that's to be obsessive about them, because if you're not, they'll just chew you alive.
Right. Well, what I found was that you have so many things that you have to do that are last minute, that you better make sure the things that you don't have to do last minute are done several minutes ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on game days, game days, if you could prepare for game days 3 days ago, you would have, but you can't. You can only prepare for game days on game day. So there's an intensity, to that. And so recognizing when you have some slow times and trying to leverage those slow times to get ahead. Because like you said, last minute stuff is coming. And it's a matter of how well you've cleared your plate to deal with it. That'll probably help you. Difference between survive and thrive, probably. Right.
Now, when you get into a game day, how does your game day look? Or game day, I should say. Games day, I should say.
Yeah. So really blessed here at Kings, where we have a really fully developed athletic department. And so I've got a lot of people leaning in on game day. And so particularly our assistant, we have an assistant athletic director who the bulk of his job is game day preparation. And he's just done a tremendous job. He's young, and he's done a tremendous job picking up on the obsessiveness about the details. And so he's created all of these game day checklist sheets that really help him. They free his mind to adapt and to be flexible, because all he has to do, he doesn't have to think about all the details. He's got all the details printed out in front of him. And so game day is really about him, communicating with him, making sure he's got all the support he needs to get things rolling. And then, that just frees me up, quite honestly, to spend a lot of time. I'm checking in on coaches, checking in on student athletes, checking in on parents when they arrive at games, just to make sure that they feel welcomed and feel like they have the support they have. So that's a little bit what game day looks for us like. We also have a director of athletic operations that deals with bigger processes than just your basic one game setup. If we've got a major issue with a facility that's going to require 48 hours to address, to get it ready for an athletic event. Let's say, we've got major scoreboard issues, or we've had just incredible amounts of rain and it's got a field underwater. He doesn't actually physically do all that, but he's kind of almost like a general contractor at times, making sure that all the resources are in place so that we can stick as tight to the schedule as we possibly can, despite all of the craziness that can happen sometimes. So that would be what game day looks like, and even building up to game day a little bit.
I was blessed with a phenomenal assistant who is now the AD, and I don't know if he knows. I hope this is his first year. I wonder if he knows how important he was to me, and hope that he replaced himself with someone like that, because they're invaluable. And
absolutely.
And you can't tell them that enough, because they're just running around going, you really, there he goes, So now the issues that we come across now, as opposed to when you start, we're talking about concussions, safety, things of that nature. How do you deal with those, or how do you prepare for those things? And as far as, the way it is now as opposed to the way it was 15 years ago.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that any athletic administrator needs to do is to really have some habits in place that keep them relevant on these topics as they evolve. And so that's going to be primarily reading. How aggressively are you reading? And maybe not so much reading, but secondarily, applying what you're reading, taking it seriously, considering how it applies to your community. And because every community is so unique, every parent community wants response to those matters in a slightly different way. And so I think reading and then applying that reading is important. Understanding what the buzzwords are, understanding what they mean, understand what they don't mean. Those types of things are a big deal. And then encouraging the people in your department that are very directly responsible for those safety matters. So for us, we've got a director of sports medicine. We also have a director of performance training, which is what everyone calls weight trainers, weightlifting coaches now. And then obviously the key sports where the inherent risk of injury is particularly high. So you're talking your footballs, the concussion rate in girls soccer is very high. Knee injuries in female athletes, your lacrosse sports, things like that. And so making sure that those coaches are also very, very relevant in their understanding of the safety issues and what needs to be done to address them in today's day and age. And so, you're talking everything from, we just went through maybe 2 or 3 years ago, just a really, really well thought out process for, okay, how do we fully implement concussion baseline testing here? It had been implemented in kind of spotty hit or miss type way previously. And we just finally sat down, really me and our director of sports medicine. So, okay, this is a relevant issue. This is something that really needs to be part of how our kids experience athletics here at Kings. How are we going to do that? And he did a great job digging up information on it. Came across the SWAY concussion management system, which is really managed through the kids' phones with an app. And it's managed through balance and reaction time testing on their app. That creates the baseline we need. And then we revert back to it when we suspect a concussion. And they basically do the testing again on their phone. And we have a baseline. We have their most recent readings, and it tells us whether or not there should be something that we should be concerned about there. Make sure your football coaches are very relevant in their teaching on tackling, in their ability to recognize the symptoms of concussion. That'd be true for all your coaches there on recognizing symptoms. And so those would be just a couple of the ways that we've gone about making sure that we can look our parents in the face and saying, hey, listen, your student athletes here at the Kings Academy are receiving a grade A safe experience as they're playing sports for us.
Okay, that sounds great. Now you mentioned, with the female athletes and the knees and things like that. Have you noticed any change in those kind of injuries because of the testing and the prevention you've done, or is it still in that experimental stage?
Yeah, so our director of performance training, his name's Jeremy Evans. In my opinion, as I understand the lay of the land for performance training across the country, he's probably one of the premier performance trainers in the country. He has a strength coach with him that's a female. Her name's Kim Ledford. She's outstanding. And they've done a great job incorporating exercises into the training of our student athletes that will reduce the risk of these types of injuries, knee injuries, particularly in the female athletes. I think they're concerned about it in all the athletes, but obviously the rate's a little bit higher for female athletes. So that would be one way that we're paying attention to that and seeing a reduction in it. When we have a knee injury or an injury that you could say is very, I dare say, stereotypical, so a blown ACL in a female athlete, a concussion in a football player, the stereotypical injuries, we take a lot of time to really evaluate what happened, why it happened, what have we been doing up to this point that was attempting to reduce it? Did we do enough? What are we going to do moving forward? Because some of those things, boy, oh boy, a lot of people would like to say you can reduce all the way down to zero. You really can't. It's the inherent risk of sports. You're going to have them, but was it something that maybe could have been prevented is how we look at those things. And so for concussions, it's really about, hey, are we doing a great job of recognizing them when they're happening? The baseline testing was one of those steps forward, being very cautious in those things. And so that's a little bit how we're tracking it. We're not trying to get to zero, but we are trying to put things in that we think are best practice that'll reduce the risk. And then when it happens, a lot of people get together and talk about, okay, why did it happen? What were we doing up to this point to reduce it? Were we doing the right things? And do we need to make any adjustments at this point to prevent it from happening again?
I think as a former athlete, you understand that there is risk involved whenever you participate in anything. You just don't think it's going to happen to you. That's usually the way it works. Like, what? My knee just went out? No, I'm not the one that gets hurt. It's somebody else that gets hurt. So when you're looking at follow-up, do you have a particular guideline to this? You have to be out a certain amount of time or we're going to rest you, or is it just kind of a case-by-case basis when you can get back into a student athlete and get back into action?
Yeah, that's a partnership between our director of sports medicine and the area doctors. We have a team doctor And obviously we deal with all of the pediatricians that are represented in our student body, as well as any of the orthopedic specialists that deal with minors. And so that's a partnership between our director of sports medicine and those doctors. They're the ones that are, professionally certified. And as schools, I think for the most part, schools are doing a great job tackling the idea of having an athletic trainer present at their athletic events. But for those of those schools that aren't, one of the best reasons that you could present to your boards, your administrations on why you should have one is because athletic trainers, team doctors, they're the ones that are professionally certified to decide when a kid can return to play. Mm-hmm. And so we don't let coaches get involved in when a kid should return to play. We don't let parents get involved when a kid should return to play. My daughter got injured playing girls basketball last year, sprained her ankle pretty good. And trust me, I was an annoying parent with my director of sports medicine saying, hey, listen, like,
she's ready to go.
Just send her back, back. And he was like, no, Chris, she's not ready yet, And so I almost violated my own concept there, but he's a strong enough dude that he could even tell me to sit down and shut up a little bit, So that all being said, that's the biggest deal, is letting the people that are professionally certified to decide when a kid returns to play, letting them do their jobs. And like I said, here at Kings, we're blessed with some pretty outstanding people that can do that.
And you let your parents know that preseason, this is the protocol, this is how we do things?
Yeah. Our director of sports medicine does a tremendous job communicating with parents on those matters, whether it's a document that goes home at the moment of injury. We actually developed an entire page on our athletic department website for parents to reference when their child is diagnosed with a concussion by a medical doctor. Hey, here's the Kings Academy approved way to handle the concussion and to return to play from the concussion. It goes a little bit beyond the standards that you would normally see. The standards you normally see are excellent, but our director of sports medicine went a little bit out of his way to make sure that it was extra well put together, so our kids can be safe. And so our parents have a document so they can know exactly what the roadmap looks like to get their kid back to playing. That's great.
Now I've got a couple of things that are kind of keystone issues that are going around now. One, kids playing multiple sports. How do you attack that, or do you encourage that, or is it that really up to the kid or the parent, or how do you look at that?
Yeah. I would say, you just laid out 2 or 3 options there, and I would say yes. I think one of the all those options. I think one of the mistakes that athletic administrators, coaches, and parents make is they turn this into an either-or discussion when it probably is better perceived as a both end. And so, I'd be lying to you if I told you that our best teams here in our athletic department are full of multi-sport athletes. They're really not. Our best teams here in our athletic department are full of kids that are playing that sport a large majority of the year. And yet we know what the research says, and we know that multi-sportism is actually the safest route, and it's the healthiest route for student athletes to develop. And that's so important because 99% of the student athletes in any high school athletic department, their sport career will end when graduation hits. They're not going on to play collegiately. Right. And so to pursue a model that is going to develop a collegiate athlete and to try and lay that model of sport specialization across the entire face of a high school athletic department just is not safe. It's not wise. And so one of the ways that we've tried to really create a healthy atmosphere around this entire topic is, number one, we celebrate big time the multi-sport athletes here. The kids that are just making an unusual commitment to our athletic department, particularly in the high school level. We got a lot of multi-sport kids because we have a 6th through 12th grade on the same campus. We have a middle school athletic department and a high school athletic department. So we got a lot of middle school kids trying a lot of things, which is what we want, playing a lot of different sports for us. But then on the high school level, it's just the competition ratchets up. It gets intense. Kids start thinking about whether or not they want to play college, so they start focusing. And so one of the ways that we are navigating those waters is celebrate the multi-sport kids in the high school level. In end of year award ceremonies, in big time shout outs and press releases, and when we have a kid commit to play collegiately, we make mention of the fact that they also play other sports here at Kings. Right. And so lots of things like that to celebrate multi-sportism. And then the other thing that we've done to try and bridge the gap and ease any tension that may exist between us and the sport specific world, sport specialized world, is I've started to connect on social media with travel programs. And I want to know every travel program that our kids are playing in, And when they do something great in the travel world, like we shout it out on our social media, we tag those entities, those travel club entities, to let them know, hey, listen, like we're a big fan of these kids when they play sports, and a little bit, we don't care who they play for. We're excited for them. Thank you for giving them an opportunity. We're going to celebrate you and your club because you're giving our kids an opportunity. And I think that's harvested some goodwill, and it makes kids a little bit more open to the idea, hey, I might out of season, I might take 2-3 months off and play another sport for our school, But I think it's all very, very intangible. It's very subtle. It's not, like I said, it's not a black and white equation that you can put in place. You got to navigate these waters a little bit more savvy than that.
And you answered the next question I was going to ask. What is your relationship with travel sports? And that is a great way of looking at it, because in a lot of places, and I was one of those that, I want my kids doing things my way, and then suddenly they're going to do something else for somebody else, and you get them back and say, no, you're doing something different the way I taught you. Well, if you're getting that experience, and especially in multiple sports, that's not a bad thing. It takes a while for that to sink into my head a little bit, but that's the way it works. Now, when you're looking at that, as far as sharing athletes, do you schedule your off-season stuff to where you try to? If you're a basketball player, football player, soccer player, they have the same conditioning. Do you have like an off-season conditioning kind of seminar kind of deal, or do you just say, all right, we're going to do conditioning for this sport, and then this coach is going to do conditioning for that sport, and if they overlap, you got to make a choice?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done is we've tried to really either hire coaches that not only align with our philosophy as a school and our philosophy as an athletic department, but also are active in the travel world, or the coaches that we have on site. We've encouraged them, hey, why don't you consider getting involved in the travel world? Because now it exposes more and more kids to our school through the presence of that coach.
Right.
And it kind of solves a little bit the off-season question. Like, what are we going to do in the off-season? Well, I know what you're going to do, coach. You're going to go jump in where half your kids are anyway, and that's into the travel world, And so that's been a natural evolution for us here in Kings. The travel scene here in South Florida is very, very intense. It's very popular. It's everywhere in every sport. And so that's been a pretty easy evolution for us. And then here on campus, when our coaches are training off season, our coaches just do a great job. I'm just so blessed that we've got coaches that have great respect for each other. And so, for example, if a basketball coach has a whole mess load of his kids that are still playing football, that basketball coach is going to run off-season training in the fall. He just knows he's going to have a bunch of his guys playing football, and they won't be able to attend. And guess what? In most cases, those coaches, they're sitting in the bleachers Friday night cheering on their kids who happen to be playing football that night. It's just never I think the adults in this sport industry should do everything they can to keep from fighting over the kids, because that's just the worst thing that could happen for the kid. You might turn the kid off from being involved in sports in general, So we try not to do that here at Kings.
Well, I think what we run across is we teach them individual sports in those individual sports how important team is.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately sometimes when we the whole program, we don't treat that as a team. And I think that is one of the things that we have to strive to do. Is like, okay, we are a team. So if we have to share time, court space, field time, whatever, we've got to do it as a team. No person, no coach, no team is more important than the entire program. And I think sometimes that gets lost especially when you've got pressure from the administration, from the parents and everybody else. You think, well, I'm fighting for my job. Oh, well, I'm also trying to be part of a team. So that's a tough line for people to walk, but I think you've got it right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we're blessed at Kings. For the most part, we get that right every day.
Okay, and you mentioned something about off the air about some administrative things that you're dealing with now. Are you at liberty to talk about that, or is that something that you really can't talk about?
No. I'm sure we can talk about it. So down here in South Florida right now, we've been navigating an official strike for football and volleyball. So the area football officials and volleyball officials, quite honestly, they want to raise. They haven't had one in quite a while. And they just kind of drew a line in the sand. And it was a little unfortunate because the time was real tight to the fall season beginning here. But here's what I told. I was on air with the local ESPN affiliate down here a couple days ago, and I told them that the school districts that are involved, the officials association that is involved, and then our state athletic association, FHSAA, these are all organizations that are student-centric, meaning the welfare of the student is the core portion of their philosophies. And ultimately, this will be resolved because all of these entities are after the same thing. That's the well-being of the students. Now, it's nuanced and it's complicated, and I get that, and I probably sound a little bit more politically correct at the moment, but it is sincere. I know tons of individuals in all three of those entities, and they're doing this for kids. And there's a couple other things we got to figure out. But so far, the officials' work stoppage has been resolved for football. And so we are back online for football and good to go. And the volleyball officials' work stoppage is evolving quickly, it appears, to resolution. And so, no one likes it, and it's complicated. And I get that. And at the same time, I think what brings everyone back to the table and what gives me optimism that all this stuff will always gets resolved is because all of these people and all these organizations are all about the kids. And when you all share that similar purpose,
right,
you're eventually going to find resolution together. So,
well, I've spoken to any number of officials any number of times, and they've always said, "Oh, this is for the kids, and I do this for free." No, you wouldn't. But it's to the point where it's close to that.
Yeah.
They still are going to do this, and right minds are going to figure out a way to make it work. It's you've come to a point where they had to make a stand, which is understandable.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, one last question I want to ask you, and I know you've got a lot to do. I appreciate you being on. We're talking about just from the Women's World Cup and that kind of aspect, female participation. Is it up any where you are? I know that in just general in different sports that you wouldn't expect. I don't want to put it that way, but you didn't see the rise coming in female participation.
So I think we have had some rise in female participation. I don't think it is unique to. I think the female rise was unique. I don't think it's unique to our school though. So for example, girls lacrosse is really, really popular. And we've only had it for 4 or 5 years now. And it's really, really popular with a lot of young ladies involved. And then our swimming program has really evolved nicely with really probably 50-50 participation between males and females. Volleyball is very popular here. And so participation there is great. We actually happen to have a state championship competitive cheerleading here. And so one of the things, so for me, I try and be a Christ follower, and I believe that every single person was created with very unique purpose. And so that crosses gender lines, that crosses ethnic backgrounds, that crosses, bank accounts. Every single person has unique purpose. And so I believe very much that female student athletes and male student athletes should all have just an amazing amount of opportunities to be involved in athletics.
I asked that question for a couple of years. From my particular experience, my first year, we had a couple of seasons. So when we resurrected the programs, it was like, wow. And the girls were so excited. And I got to understand how excited they could be about something that they hadn't had before.
Yeah.
And that was really impressive. And then I was speaking to someone the other day about girls flag football, trying to get a foothold to become a varsity sport in several states. And I haven't had a chance to really have that discussion with anyone else. You're the first one. Is that something that's being considered in the state of Florida, or is that something that we're not sure about that experiment yet?
No, it's taken off in Florida. It's an FHSA sanctioned sport. We have a postseason. Yep, we have a postseason, a state championship for it, and it's incredibly popular. We don't have it here at the King's Academy, but it's a really, really popular sport right now. And so one of the things that I think we always have to be sensitive to is because of the very, I don't know if I want to say natural stereotypes, but there is a stereotype that athletics comes with a certain amount of masculinity required to be good at it. And I think it naturally can at times polarize female participation. So one of the things I've been really sensitive to, or at least tried to be sensitive to, is anytime I'm speaking to a crowd of student athletes or a crowd of parents, I try and make sure that I actually say in one way, shape, and form how important it is that our female student athletes have the exact same excellent experience that we would want for our male student athletes. And so I speak to that often. In fact, in just a few minutes here, I'm going to go speak to our girls volleyball team to make sure that they feel supported during the complications of this official's work stoppage. Their schedules got a little railroaded this week because of it all. And I just want to let them know that getting them back to the court is our highest priority. And so, again, I don't think I would necessarily have to do that. I didn't do that with our football program because I think, again, whether it's assumed or expected, I get it. But I do think sometimes our female student athletes start to feel a little insecure about their participation. And I absolutely positively don't want them to feel insecure. I want them to feel really, really empowered because I believe they can learn all the same lessons that male student athletes learn from their athletic experience. I think our girls can do the exact same thing.
Well, I think historically we have kind of said, okay, we're a male-driven athletic department, and we have to realize that it's a total athletic department, not just for one people at all. Okay. Well, Dr. Hobbs, I appreciate you being on. I know you've got other things to do. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. If you don't mind, give us a little idea of what you have coming up, where we can find you on the web and things of that nature, and we'll try and get you on again later sometime down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, thanks for having me on. And so for us coming up right now is really just trying to get these seasons launched. You know, we've been in school for a week. We've been in preseason for almost 3 weeks. And the officials' work stoppage has delayed the launching of football and volleyball season. Our other sports, cross country, swimming, and our golf programs, our cheer programs, they're all launching. And so we're just excited to have kids back, kids compete. We had a great year in 2018-19, and it looks like early here shaping up. It's going to be another great year for our athletic department. People can find me mostly on Twitter. I'm active on Twitter at Dr._Chris Hobbs. And I love to connect with people, particularly those that are passionate about educational-based athletics, and steal great ideas from each other of who's reading what book and who's writing what and all those kinds of things. So be more than glad to connect with people out there. And then once again, thanks for having me on. Love talking educational-based athletics with people.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day.
Be good, Frank.
Thanks. Bye.